Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. So I have to say, when it comes to the next decade of politics, that the old tricks, the old flower children tricks of protests and ball burning and screaming like a child at trying to get candy at the checkout line from the mother for attention and political respect are over. They're never going to. It's never going to come back the way that the mess that brought us to the point we're at in history now has, because it didn't work. People didn't like it. They got drug into it. And I think the election of 2024, not just for Trump, but all up and down the tickets, the direction of the country is going against this, the victimization politics of the political left, to scream louder and be the squeaky wheel that gets all the grease, so that we just throw taxpayer resources at those screaming voices to shut them up. I had an interesting perspective towards the beginning of March 2025, where I was in Washington, D.C., and I was able to see protesters protesting Elon Musk in front of the White House and down on the mall in front of the Lincoln Memorial. And listening to them, it was really embarrassing. I was embarrassed for them, but they're doing it because this is part of the playbook of what has worked in the past. It's kind of their Saul Alinsky playbook, where they guilt people into giving them things, and then you go out there and cry for some hippie songs to get people to coalesce around an idea, and it worked when people didn't know what it was, but now after 5 decades of about 6 decades of it, it's not going to work anymore, because people have had time to reflect. Generations of Americans have said, why did we get into the place we did? And they're blaming those kinds of issues on it, and they're wanting to turn away and go a different direction. So I was able to see it in Washington, D.C., up close and personal. Then I was in the State House of Ohio after Mike DeWine's speech on State of the State. And I saw, like a lot of politicians are up there all the time, seeing protesters, seeing a bunch of those same types of people protesting education funding, right there, taking control of the Capitol, the People's House, state of Ohio, and making a mess of it. And it was embarrassing. It certainly didn't convince me to want to listen to them. And none of the other politicians walking around were like inspired by, I want to agree with these people. No, everyone's trying to do everything they can to treat them kind of like homeless people who are walking along the side of the road begging for money at a stoplight. No one wants to deal with them. They're embarrassing, they're uncomfortable, and if anybody threw any kind of money at them in the past, it only encourages them to do more of it. So people have learned not to even look at them, don't even make eye contact, because you don't want to deal with them. And that's kind of how people were treating the protesters, because they are so off kilter from a proper debate that they're not in the realm of reality, even among Democrats. That kind of thing isn't going to work anymore. And then within hours of that, I went down to Lakota School Board meeting, emergency meeting, down to Cincinnati. Lakota is a northern suburb of Cincinnati, south side of the 275 Loop, my school district, and I went to attend that meeting and listen to some of the radicals that attended, because they're essentially begging for more money. They're trying to create an opportunity to go for another tax increase, and they want money for some of the voucher programs that have peeled away students from their budget, and they're upset about it. So you have a bunch of people in the audience who are upset that that's a reality, that people have choice, and they may want to take their kids somewhere where those people aren't. And what no one has really understood and come to terms with, and the reason why Trump is in the White House, Trump would have been in the White House a decade ago, or even 15 years ago, or the beginning of the Tea Party movement. You have to understand something, that this just didn't happen because he came in with a magic wand and seduced everybody into voting for him. I went to events that Trump was at when 2010, 2011, when Trump was just starting to dip his foot into the Tea Party waters. And there was a crowd, maybe 50, 60 people around, and he was popular because he was on The Apprentice. but he didn't have crowds like he has now. It was when we were given Barack Obama, and it told just perpetual tax increases. We own your kids at the public schools, and if you say anything about it, we're going to come and spray paint your house and chastise you in public. What the people of public education have not figured out, that the biggest enemy of public education has been them. And it's been these flower child protest methods, these guilt people into action methods that have only worked because people were kind, too kind during the 80s and the 90s, going into 2000 up to 2010. And at that point, we were given Barack Obama. No one believed that Barack Obama should have been a lot of people didn't believe he should be president. We were guilted into accepting a socialist into that position because he was a person of color. It's the same method they used for Black Lives Matter. Here's Marxism, but you can't call it that because these are people of color. And you're not allowed to talk about it because you're a racist if you do. Those methods have only turned people off. And what they've done is they've turned their minds away from the political order of the past that was controlled by a lot of those radical elements. And they've turned to someone like Trump, who will say it like it is and represent them in the way they want to be represented. So there is no putting the genie back in the bottle. There is no manipulating people into accepting that old order. We're in the public education debate, and this screaming in state houses and antagonizing people in public when they go to school board meetings and giggling and laughing at them, trying to shout them down. When I'm there at these school boards, they ask, why is nobody here? Why don't anybody come to these school board meetings? And the only people that ever do come to the meetings are the people begging for money, and the people who are really kind of psychologically off kilter. And I would say there's a psychological common thread that all these kinds of people have, and they've been hiding it behind polite society. But the typical protesters who are always screaming for more government money are looking to fulfill something that's missing in them, which is courage, personal initiative. And so through collective salvation, they've been able to hide, and it's kind of a sick trait. And they really need help psychologically. But no amount of money you throw at them is going to help them because they're trying to hide their defects, their social defects. And I say this because like I said, I have a lot of experience just in the ones I mentioned here. But over the years, if you break everybody down, you talk to them, you sit them at a table, and get them talking about themselves. They have bad relationships with their family. They have bad relationships with themselves. And they try to hide all the bad things that are going on in life behind some moral crusade. So they attach themselves to public education, or they attach themselves to some dispute over Elon Musk trying to install Doge to rein in government spending. As long as the government spending is throwing a bunch of stuff out there, it's just like the person that goes to a wedding dressed in a tuxedo, and they go out in a really nice tuxedo, but they wear tennis shoes. And you can't hide the fact that the person got very good fashion taste even though they dress up like everybody else, they put the tuxedo on. It's not enough to hide the bad character that's underneath it. And as long as they're throwing a lot of money at public education or throwing money at all these federal institutions, and the government is giving these people a platform to kind of hide in polite society, it worked okay for them to hide what it was that was broken in them. But people are tired of funding that. They're tired of dealing with them, and they're not going to do it anymore. And the trend is going to be to rein all that spending in and root those people out, because normal people don't want to be attached to those people. And that's ultimately at Lakota schools. That's exactly the problem. Why do you have people leaving the school district? Why are parents wanting their kids to be homeschooled or take advantage of a voucher program? Because they don't want their kid to share the halls with other kids that are raised by parents like that, by people who are broken and are using money confiscated from taxpayers to throw into some moral cause that can hide their emotional defects. that they're even hiding from themselves in most cases. So you have a system of broken people that are screaming for more money to hide the fact that they're broken people from the world. And once you stop spending money on that stuff and you start reining it in, which is why they're so terrified of Doge, because it's going to expose them for who they are, which is a bunch of broken people, a bunch of people with psychological problems. It's easy to hide that stuff from the world when you're spending other people's money to look like a moral crusader that's trying to help the kids, or you're trying to elevate government spending in some other task, which is why government's grown so big. When you find out the kind of people that are in these jobs, they're the kind of people who have broken personality traits that they seek the cover of government because they don't have the confidence to live life in the private market because they can't, because they don't have the intellectual power to do it. They're timid people that are averse to risk, and they want to hide in the background and force everybody else to pay for covering up what they're trying to hide from the world. And that trajectory of thinking and getting together and burning bras, or like the PETA people do, you go stand on a street corner naked and use the ostentatious display of nudity to cover the fact that you're a young kid that doesn't really know what you are in life, and you're trying to use some moral crusade to give your life meaning in the way that you think it needs to be. These are psychological problems, but they're not problems of society. And society in general has grown tired of funding that kind of mess, and they're just not going to do it anymore. So rather than articulate it to a pollster that calls them up on the phone, or to participate in a school board meeting and speak at a microphone and give your position, because you're only going to be shouted down by everybody if you do it, they just stop going to the meetings, and they stop letting people know. They stop reading the newspapers. They go to news sources that reflect their personalities. They pull their kids out of school. They find school vouchers so they don't have to deal with them. And they'll avoid those people at all costs, just like you do the homeless person begging for money at a stoplight off the interstate. You don't want to give them money. You don't want to engage them. You don't want to talk to them. You just want to listen to your radio and go do your business. Keep your windows rolled up and move on. And the people who say, well, that's not polite, that's not very socially conscious, that's not a good Christian way of living life. That's what people want to live their life, and they don't necessarily want to be embroiled in everybody else's problems, and they don't want their problems to be made their problems, other people's problems to be made their problems. There's one thing to be compassionate and help people when you can. It's another thing when those people deliberately don't help themselves, and then they make it so that you have a political system that forces you to prop them up without any recourse on behavior correction changes. So they act recklessly in their life and then expect you to bail them out with more government money towards more government programs. And for all the bad things they do in their life, they go and make a moral crusade to go pass a school levy so you can throw more kids at a teacher union, or more money at a teacher's union, using the kids as the disguise of doing it. And then they call that a moral crusade that has value, when really it's just looting and using children in order to extract money they don't deserve for services people don't really want. And they've done it for such a long time that people have now become pretty open-minded about voicing their opinion, at least with a MAGA hat, or at least they can vote for someone like Trump and he'll represent them. And their goal is to take that away, make sure that there's not an option for someone like Trump to come along, by eliminating them from any kind of discussion, so they can have candidates that will keep the political order in place that has caused all this trouble all along. And they fantasize that is sustainable, and it isn't, and it certainly isn't in this day and age, and it's not going to be the way political trends are going to go into the next decade or two. It was always going to come to an end, and it has now, and there's nothing they can do about it. And they're only making themselves into fools by insisting on an order that has now long been rejected, and that's the only path they have forward as a political party. And I say that when people are debating whether or not Democrats are going to be a viable political party in the future, I don't think they will be. And I said this 10 years ago. I said by the early 2020s, I think the Democrat Party will be completely gone. They pretty much are. They're going to have to completely change their political platform and probably have to rename their brand and become something else, because what they are is something people don't want, and you can't guilt people into thinking otherwise, which is the only strategy they have on the table. So that's on them. But my experience with a lot of those people is that their political position is what it is to cover up psychological problems, and people are done trying to facilitate those psychological problems. They don't want to do it anymore. So there is no screaming and crying and protest that's going to change that behavior. There's no behavior change that's going to come about that's going to turn those clocks back to the old political order as they got used to it, because people have fundamentally changed and grown accustomed to saying no, and that's why they will vote for Trump and any future version of Trump that comes along, because it gives them insulation from the chaos of the radical left, which they no longer want in their lives. And that's here to stay. It's not going to change. Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you love it. It's been raining. It's an interesting day here to have rain coming down and messing my camera up, but it's all good because we're having a good discussion. Anyway, have a good day and see you later.